Welcome back to episode 6 of the Bullpen. Today's episode, we are going to be joined by Josh Reynolds he is with Tennessee Baseball now. He is the director of ops for Tennessee now. So he was a former prep baseball Colorado scouting director. We all have been around Josh when he was with the company, and he's an awesome guy. So I know we're all super excited to talk to him and hear what he has to say. But other than that, guys, how you doing? Everybody have a good weekend and everything? Y'all good?
Fantastic, Gavin. How you doing?
I'm good. Yeah. No Bears talk this
Besides
week.
the Bears, everything's good.
We talk about that
That
every
game
week.
didn't
I'm
happen.
done.
I don't know
I'm
what
done.
you're talking about.
I'm done. Pete comes in here flaunting his Northwestern hoodie before we started recording, and Illinois lost to Northwestern. It was just a bad sports weekend for me. So
We're talking
Not
college
even
basketball
playing.
there, right?
basketball, yeah, it's college basketball.
All
So
right.
It's not
It
even
just-
playing.
yeah.
Well,
I've
in
had this since I was,
Wisconsin, they played
16.
Marquette, didn't they? 2 top 15
they
programs.
did. I watched like the first few minutes of the game. I don't even know who won.
I think Marquette
but-
took it.
Yeah, I
took it all.
figured. But no, there's Illinois and Wisconsin actually play tomorrow night for basketball. So that'll be a fun one.
How does that
Yeah,
work
the
for
house
you?
divided.
Yeah, who do you root for
Yeah.
there, Gav?
So Illinois basketball, that's my thing. Wisconsin football, I just root for them because I go to games sometimes. But yeah, my girlfriend's a big Wisconsin fan, so it'll be a divided house tomorrow night. But rooting for Illinois for sure. But anyway, I guess let's kind of move on. We had some commitments around the state, and these are kind of going from the last 2 weeks. And Division I commits, we had 4 in the past couple weeks. Division II, we had 3. Division III, we had 4, and then junior college, we had 9. And just like my biggest takeaway that I wanted to mention is that Lakeland Junior College down there in Mattoon keeps getting state games kids, and they got another one in these past couple weeks. Matt Murphy from Mount Carmel committed there, and that is their 8th state games commit. So just big shout out to Lakeland. They keep getting those guys, and they're leading the way with schools committing kids from the state game. So that's awesome. And actually Jimmy Downs too. He recently decommitted from Northern Illinois and flipped to Lakeland. So another big commit there for Lakeland. So awesome stuff. But I mean, I don't know. Do you guys have anything? Like, I know there's a couple names in here. Like Colin Roche was a big winner for us in the past. Carter Lennington. Anything you guys got?
Well, yeah, both going junior college.
Yeah.
Colin Roche, I know he came to the unsigned senior, and I talked to him a little bit at the event. Just, hey, what do you have going? He was unsure of, exactly what level he was gonna end up trying to commit to. He was open to anything, and he landed there at Harper. So, good opportunity for him to keep his just recruiting open as he goes into the next level and knocks out his gen eds over there at Harper, and hopefully gets a chance to really compete and play a bunch over there. And then Carter Lennington, same deal. Both are catchers. Lennington's going to Lincoln Land, and I know he performed really well for us multiple times over the last calendar year. So 2 performers going junior college right now.
I'm excited to see Otero at Lewis because I played at Lewis. That's probably the first future gamer they've ever gotten. I would think, at least out of high school. He's staying close to home, goes to Romeoville, so should be a quick little 1-minute drive over to campus. And I would think he's got a chance to crack that lineup pretty early.
Yeah.
So
He's a well above average high school shortstop. He can run, he can handle the bat. I think it's a really good gift for Lewis, and Lewis has had plenty of high level prospects come through there. We're looking at one of them right now in Peter Hammett, but a guy like Jake Caraba out of Neuqua Valley a few years back ends up throwing really well at Lewis, and then he finds himself at Louisville. He was a guy that maybe if we had seen him a little sooner would have had a chance to be a future game type arm, because his senior year of high school, going into his senior year, I remember him at the top prospect games, or actually it was the top prospect showcase. Upper 80s arm with a really good breaking ball, really athletic, repeated tons of strikes. So I liked him. Lewis, they've had plenty of talent coming through there. So Nice to see them getting a local guy. He's from Romeoville, Carlos Otero, keeping him home, and let's see what he can do there.
Yeah, and actually another thing too, just Jaden Fauske is one of our top 2025s in the class. He's number 2 right behind Cam Appenzeller. He committed to Louisiana State, which everything, I mean, Drew, you've spoke on it quite a bit, that he's probably one of the better bats that you've ever seen come through the state, at least since you've been doing this, maybe longer, but that's awesome to see. Obviously, LSU is a big-time program, so I don't know if you guys want to touch on that at all, or...
No, I mean, you mentioned it, and I would agree with what you said. Like, he is one of the top bats I've seen since doing this bat. I started in 2015, and there's been plenty of good hitters that have come through. There's been plenty of high-level athletes in the Alec Thomases and the Dylan Heads of the world. When I think of bats that have really stood out to me since I've been doing this, like Matt McCormick was one of just the truest hitters I've ever seen. When you factor in the bat to ball skills, the whole field approach, the plate discipline, also the power, and Jaden Fauske has all of that as well. I rarely ever see him swing at a pitch out of the zone. I rarely ever see him swing at a pitch in the zone and swing and miss. He can use the whole field. He doesn't sell out for power. It is as polished and as advanced of a bat as I've seen. So, you mentioned LSU, like he had his pick of the litter on where he could go, and found a place down there in the SEC. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with him in the draft and NIL and how it all plays out. We talked to Coach Reynolds over at Tennessee, and just that's a huge thing that these schools are going to have to combat now moving forward. Is they're getting high-level players that are going to be getting plenty of interest in the draft. And how does an NIL offer to a player help maybe, affect his decision on, okay, I can maybe make the same money as a signing bonus, but go and play in the SEC, experience college for a little bit, and then hopefully when I'm done at LSU, I have a quicker path to the big leagues. That's the ultimate plan for some of these higher level talents. So it will be interesting to see what happens. We saw somebody out of Illinois just kind of choose that path, and I don't know what kind of NIL money he got at Kentucky, but Tyler Bell. Tyler Bell had a number that he wanted to sign for if he got drafted, and the organization that drafted him, this is all hearsay and stuff that I hear, but maybe didn't match his number, and Kentucky was maybe to, elevate an NIL or whatever it may be, and convinced him to go to Kentucky, and now Tyler Bell's on campus over there. So I do think those type of conversations and those debates and those decisions for these high school athletes is going to become more and more prevalent.
Yeah, and to look at more of these commitments that we've had every week or every couple weeks, we post the recruiting roundup every Friday morning, usually in the morning. So if you want to kind of look at more of those guys that committed these past couple weeks, go ahead and check out that article on our website.
That's
go
just
ahead
a
before
good call out, because not everybody's going to be glued and locked into their X account all the time, seeing all these commits come through.
Yeah.
So if you ever feel like you missed, you want to know what's going on, like go to the website, go to the news section. You'll see that article. Hopefully we have it laid out under related content to where we have a specific code, and all of those articles throughout the fall can just be right there at your disposal, so you can see. If you're interested in that kind of stuff, go to the website, check it out. And just calling that out, Gav.
Yeah, and actually, that's kind of a good thing to mention, too, that I probably should have been more specific with. If you go to just like our Illinois website, prepbaseball.com/Illinois, and you look at our homepage alerts on the right side of your screen and you scroll down to the Bullpen podcast section, we actually have a homepage for the Bullpen, and on that we have all of our kind of more interesting articles that are in this off-season time that aren't so event-specific. So the recruiting roundup, Hammett's been doing a lot of signing day stories. We had some, I think, Illinois prospects in the pros stories that we put in there. So all kinds of cool, maybe less event-specific content that is on that homepage. So be sure to check that out if you kind of want to have some more information on some of that other stuff that maybe we don't go fully deep in the weeds with here on the podcast. But yeah, like I was saying, we're going to transition to baseball news. A little bit different. Like, I know Def usually talks through some MLB news, and there is some MLB news to talk about, but honestly, the first thing on the list, like, I don't know, I'll let you guys talk about it, but Prep Baseball Taiwan, or International, we had our first event in Taiwan this past weekend, and it looked awesome from afar on Twitter, so I'll let you guys kind of open the floor here.
Tyler, what do you have on it? It looks like you're getting ready to speak up. I feel like I'm an outsider here. I'm so locked in and focused on Illinois and Wisconsin. Um, and I try to keep my finger on everything that's going on, but there's a lot of different tentacles to our company, and it just seems like things keep sprouting up and happening at a very, very fast rate. So, I did catch wind of this. I think it's extremely cool what's going on, and it looked like a very successful event. But I'll turn it over to you guys because I know you guys had at least some information you were collecting from that.
Yeah, no, it looked really cool. Again, from the outside looking in, I think, again, we've touched on this before, but just the way, our president, Sean Duncan, continues to elevate this company. Like now we're international now. Obviously, if you don't count Canada, we've had Canada for a while, but no, I think it's really cool. I know I saw there were, a few 90-mile-an-hour arms that were at that thing too. So, but no, there's baseball all over the world. So I think the more we can continue to find and evaluate the prospects that are all over the world, all over the globe, it's a really cool thing.
And yeah, I know our Alabama director, David Sharp, went out there, and he's been somebody that's been involved with Team USA. I want to say at the 12U level and potentially different levels as well. But David Sharp's one of the best guys in our business. He does an outstanding job down there in Alabama, and went over there. And Gav, you were kind of, somebody was talking about it, how he's talking to the players, but then there's the translator, the interpreter right there, and that's just a
Yeah,
different dynamic that I
yeah.
have no clue kind of how to go about.
And actually, one thing that I was kind of thinking about when we were talking about this and how cool it is that aside from obviously having the event there is cool, but they had over 100 players register, and the fact that, and I guess another side note to that, I saw on Slack this morning, uh, Les Lukács, I think it's how you say his name. He's the California State
Yeah,
Director. Is that
Lukács. Yeah, Les
Lukács?
Lukács.
He was saying that they have at the preseason All State kids from Japan that come to their event, and I don't know if it's a ton. It might just be a couple, but I just think it's super cool because, like, I guess personally, I never realized like potentially how big of a reach kind of that we have, that people know about us, and that internationally, people know what prep baseball is. Like that's just super cool personally to see from an employee standpoint. Like it's just awesome.
And hopefully we can continue to be that vehicle, for these players, that medium, that somebody in Australia, Taiwan, Japan, Dominican Republic, can hopefully use our database and use the systems we have in place to have a profile, to have all their data, to be, the one-stop shop for not only just players in the United States, Canada, but maybe some other countries here as we branch out. And Pete, I don't know if you had anything to add as well.
Well, no, that's like what I was going to say. I'm looking at the Prep Baseball International Twitter right now, and they put out a poll on where they should go next. So, I mean, it looks like they're already thinking about the future. We got Japan on here, Venezuela, Australia. I'm curious, like, are there any other, like, in these countries, is there anything like us there, And it's like, because I really don't know. So it's cool to
I don't
see
know
that
as
we're,
well.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
cool to see that we're getting over there and hopefully helping kids out. But yeah, I did not know that Bless was getting kids all the way from Japan and Cali. That's pretty wild to me.
Yeah, it's
Really
just
cool.
cool like that
Yeah.
we could potentially, like, these kids come to an event and it helps them potentially get to a college or university here in the States. Like that's I would think super beneficial for coaches, and it makes it maybe a little bit easier on them to try and recruit internationally. I'm not entirely sure how all that stuff works, but that it's pretty unique and pretty cool. But I think now, like, the pro case here, coming back to Illinois specifically, Drew, our pro case this is our third year doing it, and it's proved to be pretty successful, I would say. In the past, we've had a couple guys get drafted that have gone to that event, and then this year it looks like we have some really high level talent coming as well.
Yeah, I'm fired up for the pro case. As always, it kicks off our winter events. So there's a number of different ways you could look kind of at the pro case. One thing that is really important to me is running it before the Super 60. We are here in Illinois. The Super 60 is at the max the week before the Super Bowl. With being here in Illinois, like, we're in a unique situation. if there's a late drop, if somebody has trouble with a flight for the Super 60, if somebody gets hurt, we can call on somebody and be like, hey, come to the Max on Sunday. And, if you're in Illinois and you get an invite to the Super 60, that's one you really don't want to miss. So we try to run the pro case a couple days before the Super 60 to give these players not only an opportunity to show well in front of pro scouts. We don't have it, as an 80, 100 kid event. We really, really are strict with the invites. We want quality over quantity. And we've done that in the last couple of years. Last year, we had a great showing of pro scouts. But the reason I say that about the Super 60 is the first year we ran it, like Cal Sefcik, absolutely put on a show in BP at the pro case, earned himself an invite to the Super 60. Last year, Aiden Hayes came out and threw one of the more impressive bullpens I've seen in a while, earned himself an invite to the Super 60. There were conversations on a bunch of other guys. I know Ethan Eberle was a guy that showed really, really well last year. Really high on him, left-handed arm out of Normal Community now at Louisville. But there's been a number of great showings. And then just looking at this year, like we just posted the event, we just sent out invites, and we are getting some really good responses. CJ DeKinga, Manuka, infielder, all kinds of upside, all kinds of things to like. He's one that just registered. Enzo Infelice, I think he's one of the better right-handed bats in the Midwest. When you talk about power, hit, just being polished and just having that hit tool, I think Enzo's right up there. And there's a number of other guys that I could list off, but we're running it during the week. I want to make sure I have the day right. It is going to be on Wednesday, January 29th. So just a couple days before that Super 60. But if you have been invited to that, not sure if you want to come or whatever it may be, like, it's going to be a really good event. It's way more personal than some of the other events. Like, we try to give hitters multiple rounds. We try to get in there. We try to let you guys kind of, even mingle with the pro scouts if you want, per se. But excited about that. I'm sure I missed on some things if anybody else wants to add on.
Well, I was going to say the very first pro case I was a part of was actually at the Pullman Center. And Victor Izquierdo popped and got an invite to the Super 60. But it's just been really cool to see like the evolution of it. Because that was the first time I think we did it at the Pullman Center, Drew. Like that was the first.
I think you're right, and this actually would be the fourth year.
Yeah.
If I'm thinking about it correct, it's the third year doing it at the Rhino Academy. But you are correct. Yeah, Izquierdo, man, that's an impressive human being right there.
Yeah, for sure. But I just remember I'm not even ashamed to say it. We had one pro guy show up and we're like, all right, well, it's the first time we've done it. One scout here. Whatever. Like the kids are here to get like the personal feel and like multiple rounds of BP, like all just their numbers updated, all that. And then last year we had almost 20 guys, scouts there. So it's just cool to see the evolution of it. And hopefully it just keeps getting elevated with the talent that we have rolling through the state here. And
I don't even think I mentioned like last year, I mentioned these guys getting invited to the Super 60, but we have Jude Warwick at the event. Downers Grove North, to me, he was, I don't even know where he finished in the final rankings. And it's one of the reasons we harp on like, hey, the rankings is just a number. Like, don't let it dictate to you. Like, we're one company, but he was probably a top 30 prospect. He was not a top 10 prospect, but a left-handed hitting infielder from Downers Grove North that we had seen a lot. We really liked it, liked the upside. Thought the kid had a really, really bright future, but he comes to the pro case, fast forward then 7 months and he's drafted by the Detroit Tigers. Maybe he would have been seen anyway. Like he went to Downers Grove North, which is where Jimmy Janicki went. And Jimmy, he was on a ton of pro scouts radar as well, before he decided to go to Troy, but awesome to see Jude Warwick last year. And then the year before that, one of the best bats we saw at our pro case was Jake Seitel out of St. Charles East. He was committed to Illinois, and he gets drafted coming off that event. So, seeing the track record of that kind of building up with some draft picks, and I'm sure there's going to be future draft picks that were at the pro case that will just take a few more years to kind of get to that point. But yeah, excited about just kind of the early registrations and the way this year's event is shaping up already.
Yeah, and the Super 60 and like the future games are obviously like the pinnacle kind of national events, and obviously the All-American game now too. But I think with that, I remember going to my first Super 60 2 years ago and walking in, and there's so many scouts. Like, it was insane. You go to the future games, my first one. Everyone's like, oh, that's awesome. There's so many coaches every school. You go there, and no one's kidding. Like, it is insane how many people are there. And then kind of now in Illinois, we're having our pro case. And from the first one that I've gone to last year and hopefully this year too, like the amount of scouts that have continued to more and more come. And then at the state games, same thing. Each year that we've done it, more and more and more coaches are at the event. It's super, super cool to see because that's what it's about. It's about the kids getting recruited, being evaluated by these pro teams. And it's just the evolution, like you guys said, is just super cool to see. Yeah.
I love it too because I'm not sitting here saying, hey, if we have 30 guys come to the pro case, every guy's going to get drafted. But these are guys that we think have tools or have done something that we think maybe a pro scout would be interested in seeing. And whether they're a draft ready guy now, or if it's, hey, I really like this guy. He's going to the University of Illinois. It's my area as a pro scout. Like, I'm going to do my research now and get a report on him in high school. And then I'm also now going to track him at Illinois or wherever he's going, a Midwest school. Or maybe he's going out west and it's, hey, I need to, send this report to my guy that covers the state out west so he knows who this guy is coming in there as a freshman. There's a whole lot of like different reasons why it's really beneficial, but to me, just it's kind of a thank you too to these seniors as they've gone through the prep baseball report ranks over the first few years of their high school career, and now they're almost all the pro case guys are committed, not all of them, but it's like, hey, you've done all this, you've come to a future games or a state games or whatever it may be. Of course you want to come to the Super 60. So do so many good players from across the country. And the Super 60 has become so difficult to get an invite to versus what it was 10 years ago, 8 years ago when I started, and there were only 8 prep baseball states around the country. I mean, now we're in every state. We're pulling guys from Florida, Georgia, Texas. So it limits how many Illinois guys can go. Back in the day, man, it would be full of Illinois guys. And that's just not the case anymore, and that's okay. And that's what spurred us to create the pro case in the winter. And there's going to be plenty of draft pro-worthy guys that don't have the opportunity to get to go to the Super 60 that deserve an opportunity to get in front of schools, or not in front of schools, but in front of pro scouts at the pro case. So sorry for going so long-winded into that, Gavin, but I love that event. And like I said, it kicks off a busy winter for us, but it's always high-level players. It's quality over quantity, and can't wait to see what this year is all about.
And then one of our partners is D1 Baseball, and I think it was last week or a couple weeks ago recently, they had tweeted out that an Illinois prep is kind of looking for another good season here for Arkansas Pine Bluff. So Drew, I don't know, you have some maybe more backstory on this, and it kind of coincides with some of our rankings conversations that we've had. But Gavin Terry, he was from Brooks College Prep, went to South Suburban Junior College. So Drew, I'll kind of give you the floor with him.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. Like, I think he was a 2020 grad, so he also kind of had that tough spring to where COVID hit and he didn't have a spring season. So we may have not had a ton on him. Just looking back on his profile, we had 2 videos from showcases in his profile. I don't know how much we got to see him in game, but he was a very low rank in the class. And we see this happen a lot. We don't want it to happen all the time because then maybe we're not on the right guys all the time. But there are going to be guys that just get way better, or maybe we had the wrong take on him. And I don't know what the situation was here at Gavin Terry, but you love to see a former Illinois product succeeding at the college level. And you go back and you watch his video, and man, it's a loose, whippy left-handed swing. He looks like an athlete. Really liked the video after going back and watching it again, and then to see that he's making waves and D1 Baseball's reporting on him, which I think is another kind of aspect to what you're bringing up here, is we're trying to elevate our coverage in every area possible, like with what we do. And with the draft, we are trying to become the experts with the draft. And by doing so, we've partnered with D1 Baseball. and they're going to be all over, all of these high-level Division I prospects from across the country that are going to warrant being a draft prospect. And with what we do at the high school level, with what we're doing at the junior college level, like, we are trying to hit all of the areas that players come from that can be on a draft list. And for them to do a little article on Gavin Terry, somebody that, if they wouldn't have done that article, I wouldn't have known what he was doing. And the fact that we're partners with them, I don't know. I love to see it. And I think it's so important that players realize too, like, Gavin Terry graduated in 2020, but he's not forgotten from where I sit from, and like from within our company. Like, we are going to continue to track them with what D1 baseball does. Man, if they're a good player at the Division I level, like, they're going to continue to kind of provide content on them and put them on these draft lists, and let you know who these guys are that are succeeding at the college level. Because really, that's what it's all about. It's not how good you are in high school. It's like, can you leave high school and succeed at that next level? And Gavin Terry clearly took a route that went junior college to get him to where he needed to get to, and now he's in a good spot and he's succeeding. He's clearly at a quality fit for him. So I don't know if anybody else has anything on that, but that's what I see. And that's what I love, getting these D1 reports and seeing a guy like Gavin Terry. I was like, no way, like, Brooks College prep, 2020 grad, like, just really cool. So wanted to shout that out.
Yeah, and Drew, I don't think I mentioned it, and I don't think you did either, but he hit last season for Arkansas Pine Bluff. He hit 336 and had a 419 on-base percentage. And then they also had mentioned that he's a 6'5" runner, and he's likely going to be in their leadoff spot for them this year. So that's just, yeah, like you said, Drew, really cool to see, and we're always rooting for those Illinois guys to continue to keep getting better and better. So, Tyler, this is kind of the spot that we talked about that we still have some MLB news here, and it's a big one. So Def, I'll turn this over to you.
Yeah, I kind of teased it last week that, hey, winter meetings were starting up this week and there might be some big-time stuff going down. And Juan Soto finally came off the board last night. Biggest contract ever given out in pro sports history. Obviously, that used to belong to Shohei Ohtani after last offseason. But, he signs a 15-year, $765 million contract with the New York Mets. So, I'm just sitting here and I'm like, wow, I wish I had that type of money. So, but no, I mean, it's a big deal because this kind of now allows free agency to actually start for a lot of these teams, because a lot of those bigger market teams were all in the Juan Soto sweepstakes. So now that Juan Soto's off the board, those teams can now start turning their attentions elsewhere, which should make this week pretty active at the winter meetings. I know you three are probably hoping the Cubs are pretty active. I know I'm hoping the Reds are going to do some stuff this week. So we'll see. Maybe next week we're going to be having a lot more to talk about there.
You mentioned the Cubs. I'm just in it for, like, let's get Chicago sports teams better. I don't care if it's the White Sox, the Cubs, the Bulls, the Blackhawks just fired their coach. The Bears obviously fired their coach, so let's get some positivity flowing through Chicagoland right now. Man, I'd love to see the White Sox add a piece or something. I know there's been trade talks with Crochet and whatnot, but you mentioned that contract and it's mind-boggling. I don't even know how to comprehend that, but I think I sit back and I look at it, and I look at it from just the game of baseball standpoint. And if you're a kid coming up in this world and picking sports that you're really good at, I mean, there may not be a better sport when it comes to contracts than baseball. I know basketball, NBA has phenomenal contracts as well. It's long been that football is like one of the worst, just with the injury risk and the lack of guaranteed money and salary caps and all that kind of stuff. But baseball, to see that kind of money getting thrown around in this game, it tells me that the game has to be healthy. You're not going to be paying these athletes that kind of money if the game's not healthy. Now there's certain rules they're bringing up that I think need to maybe be looked at, which could make the game very interesting. But no, just from a financial standpoint, that is astounding. And
And Drew,
as a fellow player, like in the major leagues, you have to be applauding Soto to put a contract out there to help your market. But yeah, go ahead, Gavin.
And didn't you say that you saw somewhere that they were breaking down the contract, and it's like $5,000 a second or something crazy like that he was making.
Yeah, and I don't know the exact number, and if it's, during games that he's playing, he's
Yeah,
making that per second, or if it's just 365 every day of the year. I'm not totally sure. I'd have to do the math on
yeah,
that myself, but it's a crazy
crazy.
number. It was something. I'm a golf fan, and it was something similar to Scotty Scheffler and what he did on the PGA Tour this last year and the amount of money he made. It was like every swing he took was a certain amount of money, and it's like it's just he didn't make a lot of swings because the
Yeah.
least amount of swings you make in golf, the better. But no, it's crazy what sports can do, and the finances that go into sports and what these guys are pulling in.
Well, I want to
And
hop in here one last time. Sorry, Gav, but like I'm just sitting here thinking, like we were talking a little bit earlier about Prep Baseball International. Well, the two highest paid MLB players, like Shohei's from Japan, and now Juan Soto's from the Dominican Republic. So I think there's a cool little nugget there too, which again, the more we can get out and see more of these players across the globe, like obviously it's a big deal. Like in baseball players come in all shapes and sizes and from every part of the world. So
yeah, that's a great call out. But what I wanted to mention is that I kind of forgot to talk about it with our D1 baseball partnership. Like one thing that we kind of talked about just behind the scenes is in the spring trying to utilize that to within our podcast talk more about some college, like local Illinois college baseball teams, whether it is Division 1 or Division 2, whatever, it doesn't matter. Like just trying to spread some love to those former players like a Gavin Terry that are doing well collegiately, and so that's kind of something where we've talked about. So we're going to utilize our partnership with D1 Baseball to try and do that this spring, on top of all of our coverage for the high school baseball teams throughout the state as well. But this week on our scouting roundtable, we are going to be talking about 2026 multi-sport athletes. I know last week we might be talking about like the rankings with the 26s, but there, to be honest, wasn't really a ton of change top to bottom. So I just want to preface this that we are 100% going to miss 100% going to miss some guys that are multi-sport guys in this 26 class. But we just wanted to highlight some guys that we knew, that we've seen on Twitter, their stats, things like that. And we actually have a couple 25s that we want to talk about just because we know that they've had a really good football season. So I'll kind of open it up to you guys now if you want to get anything going.
To your point, Gav, we're 100% going to miss guys. We're not experts in, the other sports. We focus on baseball. But if you are an outstanding wrestler, an outstanding golfer, made it to state in another sport that we're not mentioning, like, let us know. DM us, throw us a quote tweet on this, when we release this podcast, like, quote tweet this, that you played a certain sport and you did this or whatever it may be. Cause we love talking about multiple sport athletes. And, in the fall, it's not all about baseball. Some guys do put away, the baseball or the bat, and they focus on other things. And, we want to hear about it. We want to know who's doing that kind of stuff. And we're going to highlight it here in this next segment, which it fires me up, Gav, because some of these guys that are doing some things in a variety of sports, and I know we're kind of focused on that football for the most part, but just shows how well-rounded some of these guys can be.
Yeah, and I think what kind of spurred this is some of the conversations that we've had with these college coaches. They've all talked about multi-sport guys, and they're like, I love them. It brings toughness. It brings different athleticism, different movement patterns that you have to use. So we thought it'd be kind of a fun thing to talk about. Obviously, we're in the winter, not a ton of baseball stuff going on. So, like, how can we try and just make this a little bit different and kind of fun? And I actually had a ton of fun looking through some of these numbers for these guys, trying to dig up some information on them. So, right here at the top, Quinn Shambeau, he is a quarterback for Libertyville. So, guys, you're in the Chicago area. I know he had an awesome year for Libertyville. I know I've seen some stats coming through, so I'll let you guys kind of talk on him.
No, I mean, it just seems like he was, I believe I follow him on Twitter, so I was just seeing every Friday night or Saturday morning, highlighting the day before, he would just go off. One of the best quarterbacks in the state. Let's see, I'm just going to read some stats. 184 for 249 for a 74% completion percentage with 3,500 yards, 52 touchdowns, and only 5 interceptions. That's the first time I've actually read that. That's absurd. He's 6A All-State, North Suburban Conference Player of the Year, and he will be at the Super 60. He's an even better baseball player, believe it or not. So
Well, that's going to get debatable here if he keeps doing
yeah,
what
I
he's
know,
doing,
I know.
because
But that's
those
absurd.
highlight tapes that are floating around the old X are impressive stuff, Quinn. Like, big time shout out to you, man. You're a baller on the football field. It looks like you can kind of navigate the pocket and kind of extend plays. And it's not a shock to me, like, that he put up 52 touchdowns in the air, because arm talent wise, he's got the best arm talent in the state, especially as like a position player. Behind the plate, it's stupid what he can do with his arm and how confident he is in his arm and how he wants to show it off. Like, there's 0 second guessing. It is a tool that plays huge for him on the baseball field, and that is some impressive stuff there. He's also a former future gamer.
Do you think it's interesting that he's a catcher and a quarterback? I think that's actually kind of interesting. Like, maybe not, because the arm action is kind of
Speaks to how
similar, like
frickin'
short.
tough and competitive he
tough,
is. I
for
mean,
sure.
to navigate the summers and what all he's doing, and then if he was trying to do stuff in the fall, I definitely
Well,
think that's
it
unique.
also just shows how athletic he actually is as a catcher to be a quarterback, because like usually catchers are not the most agile.
Maybe playing fullback or something,
Yeah.
inside linebacker, and they
Yeah.
want to hit some people.
One of
Yeah.
those guys, but
No, 100%. And gosh, there was something else I wanted to mention on Quinn, but I'm kind of blanking right now. If any of you guys have
JFG.
anything else. Yes, he was.
JFG guy.
Yes, he was. Oh, I know what I meant. So he's just a freak talent. I feel totally fine saying that, because we mentioned he came to the future games. Well, he came as a catcher, like purely as a catcher. That year, it was 2 years ago. That year, we kind of had some navigating the pitching rotations just a little different. We had a couple more two-way guys than normal, and we had an inning open. Because I think CJ DeKinga threw an inning that year, and some other guys threw an inning that year. But Quinn's like kind of not begging me, but he's like, hey, I can pitch. Like, I want to pitch. So we let him go out there, and he throws. It might have been like the last inning of the entire event.
Yeah, it was. I totally
And it's,
forgot.
I mean, it's so good. It's like, it had me thinking, is this guy a pitcher or a cat? Like, it was so clean. It was athletic. It was repeatable. It was minimal effort, nothing but strikes. And he spun like maybe the best breaking ball of anybody on Team Illinois that year. Like, it was a swing and miss breaking ball. I had Steve Nielsen, asking me after the game, like, what's up with Shambo? And, it's so the guy has a lot of things going for him. Coming off a huge, obviously, fall senior football campaign. So, if we're going to get through this whole list, we probably can't talk on all of them at this depth and as much as we are, but that's pretty stupid, and I think it warrants it.
Well, and I got one more thing to mention with Quinn. And Def, I don't mean to potentially put you on the spot here, but didn't you, when we were talking about this offline, didn't you kind of compare him to Johnny Manziel or something?
I may have had a comp, but it's to his credit, like Drew was talking about. There's this one particular highlight, like it's one of the more recent things on his Twitter, I think, but there's this play where he like breaks 5 tackles, like 5 dudes trying to sack him and throwing guys off of him. It honestly reminded me of Johnny Manziel and honestly like Ben Roethlisberger, just because he's a big kid out there, right, playing quarterback. So yes, I did have a comp, but it's probably a good thing that I'm not like a football evaluator or anything like that. So
hopefully, all just on the field comps there with Johnny.
Yes.
I'm getting more Baker vibes there. He's got like that. I don't know. I'm getting a Baker build, and Baker can move a little bit. He's kind of surprising how he moves. He's not afraid to lower that shoulder and take a hit. He's not afraid to talk a little bit after a tackle or a collision. He likes to kind of deliver the hit as a quarterback. So I'll have to think though if I have a better comp, but that's one that just came to mind.
Yeah, well, down here in Peoria area, Lane Wheelwright, he is from Farmington, and he's a 2025. He's their quarterback. He was the 2024 PJ Star Football Player of the Year, which is Peoria's like main newspaper. He now has the most touchdowns, most career touchdowns in Farmington history, and then his 2-year career stats. He's got 3,400 passing yards, 44 touchdowns, 1,300 rushing yards, 25 touchdowns, and then total it's 4,700 yards and 69 touchdowns. So Lane Wheelwright out of Farmington, he's a pitcher, he's an infield outfield guy that we've seen this summer.
He was
I
a
saw him a couple
preseason
times.
All-State guy this last winter, Gav.
Yeah, and on the mound, I saw him up to 83 in game, so he's a two-way. It sounds like he's a pretty good athlete down there at Farmington too. So awesome to see that. And then Kyle Beatty, Drew, a guy that you've had as your prospect of the week in the past. He is a stud quarterback for Normal Community. Their offense, it looked like they were scoring a ton of points. I know you had mentioned that on a call that we had a couple weeks ago maybe, but 2,000 passing yards, 32 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions for Kyle. So, Drew, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but he's an athlete.
Yeah, I mean, just that the first 3 guys we're talking about here, Shambo, Wheelwright, and Beatty are 2025s. And Beatty and Wheelwright, I don't see any commitments for them, Gav, and I'm guessing a lot of that is due to the fact that they are multi-sport, high-level athletes, and trying to figure out, what do I want to play in college? Where's my best fit? What can I do for football? Or, hey, I'm Kyle Beatty, and maybe I want to do both at the next level. So, okay, what level does that fit? Where can I go? And maybe football's a little different. They had to let that senior year play out. But 2 guys, still on the market that I think are very, very interesting. So that's really all I had, Gav.
Yeah, and moving down the list, we got Keaton Reinke. He was just a future gamer this past year. St. Charles North guy. So, yeah, Pete, what do you got?
No, just a physical, specimen. Kind of a thoroughbred. I know Drew likes to throw that word around, but he's just, all sorts of levers, high-waisted. He's strong. He's going to get stronger. Such a nice kid, too. And, the fact that he's, a beast on the football field. Just kind of, not funny, but it's just, I don't know, 1,200 receiving yards, 18 touchdowns, 7A honorable mention for All-State. And I was seeing on Twitter that he was getting some Big Ten game day visits. So he's legit. He's a legit two-way, prospect. I'm not sure which route he wants to go down or both, but yeah, good for Keto.
Well, and St. Charles North has long been a very good football program because it just reminds me of somebody named Nick DeMarco, who came through St. Charles North, who was a big football player as well. We loved him in baseball, committed to Notre Dame out of high school for baseball. But Keaton Reinke, I mean, he was a starter as a freshman there on the football team and on the baseball team. So now he's still doing it in football, but you said it. I mean, he is a thoroughbred, and in baseball, he's a two-way. He's an outfielder, right-handed pitcher. We had him at the future games just as a pitcher, and it's upside for days. So we'll see what happens with him in his baseball career, football career, what turns out to be better, if they're both the same. Because he's young still. He's got a lot of figuring out to do. And Gavin, I don't know why I just thought about this right now, but thinking of receivers that have come through the Chicagoland area, and William Pauling, I threw his name to you the other day because I know you are a big Wisconsin football guy. And Will Pauling was a Homewood Flossmoor. I'd have to look right now to see when he graduated. It might have been 2021. It could have been earlier than that, but same line of Keaton Reinke. Will Pauling could do a lot of good things on the baseball field. He flew. Really played a good center field, but at some point he decided I have a future in football, and he chose to just focus on football. But a little shout out there for Wisconsin football and Will Pauling.
Will Pauling's a stud. Actually, so Joe Sullivan, for those that know him, he was an intern, he did a lot of video editing.
He's a stud.
He's all the cool videos, pictures that we do. Yeah, he's a stud. That was Joe throughout the summer and later part of the spring. But I texted him because Joe is from Homewood Flossmoor. He went to high school there. I asked him when Drew sent me that message about Will Pauling. I'm like, hey, do you know this guy? And fun fact, that was Joe Sullivan's first friend in elementary school. So that was pretty awesome. But
that cracks me up.
Yeah. So looking at Lucas Simulik, though, quarterback for JCA, helped lead them to second place at state in 5A. So that's awesome to see. Really good shortstop for JCA as well.
Yeah. Uncommitted shortstop. He's been a varsity starter as well for a long time, since his freshman year. Gamer, competitor. No surprise at all that he plays football and that he's a good quarterback and can lead a team. He's a leader. To me, he was one of the toughest guys last year with the future games. He was on the short list that got left off. He very well could have fit right in at the future games. That's how we feel about him as a player, as a prospect. I love Lucas Simulik. I love the makeup, and he's definitely a fan favorite of mine. And just the fact that he's leading JCA on the football field as well tells me a ton. You want to talk about a storied program when it comes to football. It doesn't get much better than Joliet Catholic.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, the history there, Rudy, like, that whole thing, like, it's just cool to be the quarterback at JCA. Like, that's just, like, a sought-after thing. And then to be that and to also be the starting shortstop, he's got to be pretty popular on campus, I would think.
Yeah.
Pete, I gotta ask. You said Rudy. Are we talking like Notre Dame Rudy?
Yeah, he went to Joliet.
Oh, yeah.
No way. I didn't know that. That's sweet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did they mention that in the movie?
I'm not sure. I don't
remember. That's awesome. I did not know that. All right. Well, and RJ Duncan, we got some golf guys on here. I would not consider myself a golf guy. I love the driving range, but not the actual course. But RJ Duncan, he shot a 71, which was a -1 in the Middle Illini golf tournament. He placed third place, so that's pretty awesome to see. And I know you guys have kind of mentioned like he's a potential really good golfer there for East Peoria, and obviously he's committed to Illinois State for baseball. So go ahead, Pete.
No, I'll let Drew hop in here too, but for me, it's really impressive to be like golf. Like, if you're a pitcher only and you're a golfer, that makes perfect sense. That's exactly what I was. Like, I don't got to worry about a swing. You know, like I can go swing my club and then go pitch. And I mean, I was a 2A for maybe a year, and I was terrible at hitting, so it didn't matter anyway. But when I finally like was a PO, that was like the perfect pairing, right? He still hits, so he's got two different swings to worry about. And to be still successful at baseball and to still go out and fire a 1 under 71 when you're worrying about your baseball swing, that's just crazy impressive. I don't think people understand or realize like how impressive that actually is. And yeah, Drew, go ahead.
No, I love the game of golf. It's a game that to be good at, you have to put in the work. So for him to be putting in enough work to be shooting a 71, and that's not when I'm going out with my buddies and playing with Pete and they're giving me 4-footers, you know, they're giving me a gimme on a 4-footer that's sloping left to right that I got no chance of making. Like, he's doing this in competition. He's playing it down, while he's also kind of figuring out his baseball stuff. And just the sport of golf, like, I think it might be the best high school sport out there. So RJ, like, kudos to you playing some high school golf. Like, I don't know if you guys know, but you get out of school a little early, you go to the driving range, you go play 9 holes, you go putt a little bit. Like, it's about as good as it gets. I was lucky enough to play a little high school golf, and it also is in the fall in Illinois. It doesn't overlap with the baseball season in the spring. Like, if you're in a state like Indiana, it's not possible because their golf season is in the spring. But love to see that out of RJ. Like you mentioned, he's a two-way guy in baseball and then also playing golf. And one 2025 here that's a three-sport athlete that was busy playing golf this fall and made it to state was Cam Appenzeller. He's our number 1 in the 25 class, going to Tennessee, left-handed arm out of Glenwood. And, you know, one of the reasons he is number 1, like, he's not the hardest thrower in the class. But he's the smoothest mover. He's a 3-sport athlete. He's high-waisted. It's as clean as it gets as far as an arm action is concerned. And he's a really, really good golfer. Probably has a pure left-handed swing, but then he also plays basketball, Gavin. So what are you seeing on the gridiron?
Yeah,
I guess it's not the gridiron, it's the hardwood. I'm sorry.
He posted a video, or he shared one or something on Instagram this past weekend of him dunking in game, and he's like 6'5", I think is what we have his height listed as. And you could say, oh, he's just tall, that's why he can dunk. But if you watch this video, it's like his head was like at the rim, and it was like athletic. It was not just a I'm tall dunking it. It was awesome. It was a sick dunk. So yeah, he's a beast
He's
all
springy.
throughout. Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Easy
And he's a
spring.
competitor too, Drew, on the
Love it.
mound, on the any sport. So yeah, he's awesome. But
Reminds me of we had a really good arm in this area, Hinsdale Central, that was committed to Michigan, Ben Oosterman, a couple years ago, and 6'5", just like Appenzeller, easy mover. I really liked it on the mound. He had a ton of feel. But he was also a hooper, and he was really good. And I would see videos from the winter of just like some moves you would see a kid do that belonged in college. You don't see many high school basketball players doing this. And Oosterman got so good at basketball. I think he helped lead Hinsdale Central down to state, and he decided to change his commitment from Michigan to go play two sports in college. Which I personally like. Not many athletes are gifted enough to be that talented to play two sports at that level. And if they truly love it, I love to see guys go on and chase that passion. Because you only get one chance to go through high school, one chance to be young.
Drew, do you know where
And it
he
fires me up to see somebody like Ben Oosterman. What's
do you know
that?
where he switched to
I'd have
off
to
the top
look
of
it
your
up. I
head?
want to say it was somewhere in Minnesota.
But it wasn't like a big Division One, right?
No, it wasn't. It might have been St. Thomas. But now I'd have to
And we
look
can
it
look, but
up.
like the fact, I don't know how many kids would switch
A
from that.
chance in Michigan,
Yeah, that's
exactly.
really like a mature, like he put a lot of thought into that.
And if you're curious, go back and watch his highlights. Like they are pretty impressive. And it's it was another reason I knew I liked Ben Oosterban on the mound when I saw him pitch as a young guy. He had a low pulse, like heart rate, never showed emotion. You could tell he was that quiet competitor. And then when you see these guys like in another sport and doing it, it's like, oh, that's no surprise. Like, oh, that makes sense. Like, oh, Lucas Simulik's a hard nosed kid on the football field leading JC. Like that makes sense. So it just helps paint the picture on these athletes as well.
yeah, so then the next guy we have here is Alec Novotny from Ottawa Marquette. And actually, I grew up and played for Henry Senachwa in a very small school by Peoria, but we were in the same conference as Ottawa Marquette, and they always were that team. They're just super good at all their sports, and they always had guys like Alec Novotny on the basketball court. They are really good shooters, and Alec Novotny averaged 17.4 points per game last year and made 110 3-pointers. Like, I always hated playing Marquette. It was never fun because they always had guys every year. They were just good. They could shoot, and they would. My senior year, actually, we did beat them a couple times in basketball, so I will say that. But no, it's awesome. Alec Novotny, really good athlete, really good on the mound, and I think one thing we've talked about behind the scenes a little bit is that his curveball slider metrics and like the shape of everything on TrackMan is like one of the better breaking balls that we have in that class. So that's really cool to see too.
You just could not wait to get out that stat that you guys beat them in basketball a couple times
100,
your senior
yes,
year.
yes. And Coach Hopkins, who was the baseball coach still at Marquette, was also the basketball coach, at least when I was there. So we always kind of joked back and forth with him about, they always beat us. But no, it was fun beating him when I was a senior.
Love it. And well, you mentioned these stats for Novotny. That was as a sophomore, and he's 5'10". Like he's clearly, a baller if he's doing that as a sophomore, 5'10", putting up those numbers. And you mentioned like the metrics on the mound. I love it. I think there's a ton of upside. And you watch him play the game, there's a ton of feel for the game, whether he's at shortstop or whether he's on the mound. And he's a guy that I know we're all kind of just following, tracking what's going to happen with him because I think his best days are yet to come.
Yeah, and the next guy on the list is Johnny O'Brien, who is a quarterback at Fremd, I think is how you say it, Northwestern football commit. And Drew, I know you kind of have a cool story with maybe Johnny O'Brien's kind of backstory and the first time you saw him on the mound.
No, absolutely, and he's a tough case for us, and I don't know if it's what we're doing with him is perfect or not. How we're actually viewing him as a baseball prospect, whatever it may be, but he came to the Aurora preseason ID as a young prospect. It would have been his freshman winter. Came as a two-way guy, left, like had loose levers all over the place. The first place I watched him was as a position guy, and it was a little raw or swing, like it wasn't super polished, but you're like, oh, that's what it should look like as a freshman, like long, high-waisted, easy flick of the wrist with the back, kind of spraying uphill contact. But then I go and later we run mounds after all the position players, and I luckily enough, we're running multiple mounds. He ends up on my mound. And I'm looking at this young looking left prospect, left-handed arm, gets on the mound, and it's like 80 to 83, but it's as clean as it gets. It's nothing but strikes. And then what really like did it for me was he had three present polished pitches. He was working the fastball to both sides of the plate, the changeup like wherever he wanted, but then the breaking ball, it was real spin. It had the shape. Like I looked at him, I was like, this could be a future top 10 type of prospect in the state. When you look at the foundation he had and what it could be. But lo and behold, he was also a high-level football guy. I saw all kinds of stuff going across on his X with him going to like these prestigious football camps, passing camps. He's a quarterback. And yeah, he's committed to Northwestern. He's not even sure like what his baseball future is right now. But he's a guy, regardless if he just plays football. We had this gosh, with Jimmy Rolder back in the day at Marist. I loved Jimmy Rolder. He was a third baseman, really, really physical, could hit. There was a ton to like there, but he was also a tremendous middle linebacker, outside linebacker. He was a linebacker for Marist, and he ends up committing to Michigan for football. But I knew he was good at baseball. I didn't know if he was going to just always stick with the football, so we left him in the rankings. Kind of where we think he is as a baseball player is what we did with Rolder. Same thing here with O'Brien. Like he's still in the rankings. I want to say he's a top 50 prospect for us. I feel like if he ever stopped playing football and was like, hey, I want to pitch again, he'd be right up there as a top prospect. So I know that's a little long-winded, Gav. Peter, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to mention there as well, but that's what I had on Johnny O'Brien.
Yeah, no, I just think it's interesting how like Northwestern is going after the baseball guy, like the high level Illinois baseball prospects, because right now their starting quarterback is Jack Lausch. And I'm a Northwestern guy. Like I didn't go there, my dad did, but I that's my team. So I've been watching Jack Lausch every Saturday. It's just kind of cool. Like they're sticking with the Chicago suburb, high level baseball, two-way athlete type of player.
I mean, what a great call out there with Jack Lausch. And what a good get for Northwestern if you're just looking for one of the top athletes to come out of Illinois in the last decade. Jack Lausch was a freak athlete, and he was unbelievable on the baseball field and upside, and we could talk about him for days. He was a left-handed hitting center fielder that could go get it. And I mean, he's another guy, if he put down the football right now, I'd still bet on him on the baseball field. Love that call out, Pete.
Yeah, and Johnny's football stats this year, 3,400 yards, 39 touchdowns, and he had a 70% completion percentage. But moving down to Griffin Meeker here, he plays basketball at Tremont, two-way program down here in Central Illinois, and recently he was named to the all-tournament team at the Peoria Heights Thanksgiving tournament, so big shout-out to him. Athletic kid, middle infield type, really solid frame on him too.
He looks solid. The part for sure, yeah. Gavin. Yeah. We like him as well, and I mean that to me does nothing but boost his stock and his upside for me to hear that that he's going off this winter already. Because aren't those Thanksgiving tournaments kind of kick off to the basketball season?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know how it works up in Chicago. I'm sure that they do, but I know like down here in the Peoria area, it's massive. Like Washington High School has one. Coach Brown was a coach there for a really long time, and it's named after him now. But it's massive. They have teams from all over the country come. I know like Anthony Davis played in it back in the day. Zion Williamson, I think, played in it. EJ Liddell. Like it's big time down here. So I'm not sure what it's like up in Chicago, but.
Look at you going into the memory bank. EJ Liddell. I'm going to have to Google that one. Okay. I hope I even said it right. Huh?
Do you know who that is?
I don't. I'm ticked. I feel like I should know.
He's from Belleville. He went to Belleville West, I believe, down there in the St. Louis area, and committed to Ohio State. I think he's playing He's playing in the NBA now. I can't. It might be for the Bulls actually. I could be wrong, so don't quote me on that. But
Dang. Okay.
no, it's awesome. Yeah.
Well, and I know there's a huge tournament that takes place in Pontiac.
Yes.
I was just looking at it. They posted like the schedule and the teams, and I know Bennett's coming down to it. Lockport's playing in it. Danville goes over to it. There's obviously inner city Chicago schools going down.
That might be the Christmas tournament.
Okay.
I think Pontiac's Christmas tournament is like the longest running tournament in the state, or one of the longest, if I remember right. And then actually Princeville too. I grew up playing in that in high school, and was one of the longest running Christmas tournaments, holiday tournaments in the state as well. So it's those I know, at least from playing in them, they're always fun. Like there's kind of like a mid-season tournament. It's just a way to get the competitive juices flowing and try and win a trophy. But
I'm throwing something out here, Gavin, and I'm going to see if you know. This may be something you can edit out later, but Thad Matta. First off, do you know who Thad Matta is?
Yes, coached at
Ohio State. Do you know where
he's
originally from?
I don't.
Yeah, so Thad Matta, longtime coach at Ohio State, I think is kind of where he really became famous. But Hoopeston, Illinois, just north of Danville. There's been some sleeper athletes coming out of that area and out of Hoopeston and Bismarck and Danville and Thad Matta. So a little just college. You threw EJ Liddell at me. I had to get you back with something. So
that's awesome.
All right, good stuff.
But Pete, I saw you added here Jack Wheeler from Morris. Yeah, go ahead.
No, he's just someone that I've seen all over Twitter, just like every single week. Multiple sports. So he initially, I started seeing it with football. So a little breakdown. He's ranked 114th in the state for football, according to 247. 393 in the country. He's a 2-star, and this year he had 26 catches for 710 yards, which is 27 yards per catch. He had 10 touchdowns, and then going over his whole varsity career, he had 53 catches for 1,300 yards with 18 touchdowns, which has him at second all-time in receiving touchdowns in Morris history. So I just thought that was pretty big time, especially considering how good he is on the baseball field. I mean, he has a perfect wide receiver build, like 6'5", long levered. And then on the basketball court, I just like looking at some of his past games. He had 16 points with 12 rebounds on Saturday, and then the Friday before that he had 19. And then I don't know if it was the week before or 2 weeks before, but he had 31 points with 13 rebounds in one game. So the dude is just dominating in every sport he does. I thought he for sure needed to be in here.
That a boy, Jack Wheeler. That is really good stuff. Has to be one of the top athletes to come out of Morris in a long time. And what's so unique about him too is like he's a position player, but he's kind of fresh to the mound, and he's getting on the mound now, and it's like into the lower 90s, and there's upside there. So it's like, who knows where he'll end up at the end of the day, but you love to see those high-level athletes, and I just feel like they tend to give themselves like more options even. It's like, all right, well, if I don't hit good enough, well, guess what? I also throw 92 on the mound and can spin a breaking ball and can help you in that area. But
that was a fun little segment to go through that and find some of those stats. And I know, like we said, we definitely missed some guys. We talked through some 25s and 26s, and I know there's some 27s that are some multi-sport guys that we'll bring those guys up next week. We'll talk about them. We'll give them some love maybe, but we'll hold off until next week on some of those 27s. But looking at prospect of the week here to round this out, Drew, who do you got?
All right, I'm kicking it off this week with Martin Ledbetter from Hinckley Big Rock. And this is a tough one for me. It brings some challenges up when you talk about doing the rankings. Because we hear all kinds of stuff, out there in the world about how we do rankings and blah, blah, blah. And hey, if you come to so many events, then they'll rank you this or that. Like Martin Ledbetter's guy, he's never been to a prep baseball showcase. He is ranked. He is a guy that I personally have never seen with my own two eyes. But he is a guy that has been floating around the just amateur baseball landscape for a while. Whether it was when we first heard about him just via, X, Twitter, seeing some videos. He's 6'5", 240. Um, he hits and pitches, plays first base. But luckily for us, like he did go to a prep baseball Ohio tournament, and they did see him hit a 2-run home run, and they have seen him, multiple times. And that's the beauty of what we do is, okay, like maybe I didn't get a personal great look at him, but I'm going to trust our guys in Ohio. And hey, he really stood out at this tournament. Like, okay, well, we have something on him. Now, my confidence level with him may vary from somebody that I have seen personally or, has been to multiple events, and then I've also tracked him in game. But from everything that we have seen on Martin Ledbetter, he's a name that people at least need to know about. 6'5", 240, like I said, he's uncommitted. Reports have his fastball all the way up to 90 or better. He also has really, really big right-handed juice in the swing. So that's a guy that from where I sit, whether he's come to an event or not, like people need to know who this is. He is an Illinois baseball product that is uncommitted, that is a senior, that, people need to be on him. Especially somebody who's looking for that profile, a big, big physical arm that runs his fastball up to 90 or firmer, and somebody who's, a potential middle of the order type of bat in a lineup. So that's my prospect of the week. It's varied a little differently than some of the ones I've chosen in the past because I don't have a ton of, personal knowledge on Martin. I wish I did. I wish I had more, but from what I have, that's what it is, and that's what people need to know is there is a guy still floating out there that I think's, talent-wise and like traits-wise, there's not many others that are still uncommitted out there like Martin.
Yeah, thanks. So, my guy is Nick Zaloni out of Mundelein. This is a kid. He's still developing physically. He's 5'10", 142, but it's a kid that I think once he gets in a legit college weight program, like could really take off. At our state games, he ran a 6'9", 960, but the thing that I've long liked with Nick, I went out and saw Mundelein this spring, really stands out with the glove and can really defend at shortstop. It looked to be the same exact story at our state games this summer. It's a kid who has a natural feel for the position. The arm strength's still developing, but he's so good with the glove that, he doesn't need the super, super strong arm. He's accurate with his throws, and moves really well laterally. So, Nick's a guy that, just a true defensive shortstop, and I'm excited to see where he lands at the next level.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. Hopefully, I don't butcher this last name here, but Mick Nybrug. Is that correct? I don't even. Gav's shaking his head.
I think so. Yeah,
I'm gonna roll
I
with
would think
it.
so.
Yeah, he popped at the St. Louis Fall ID that we hosted down there. 6'3", 206, big, like long levered kid. He was a two-way guy that I really liked. I didn't see him on the mound that day, but Gav did, and he liked him. But at the plate, he's got a simple swing. He's long levered, like I said, uses them well. It's a flatter swing. He can stay through the zone. He can elevate to the whole field with some backspin up the middle. And there's some strength at impact too. He's up to like 96, I think, for the EV. And he moves well around first base as well. And then on the mound, he was 85 to 87, up to 88, spinning a curveball over 24, I believe, the max, but averaging about 23. And it's a long levered kind of like over the top delivery, get some leverage and create some angle through the zone on the fastball. But yeah, still uncommitted, two-way guy, has a real chance at both at the next level, really. But yeah, definitely wanted to give him a shout out.
And with you talking about him, Peter, digging into his numbers, this is something that I just want to hopefully help a high school, hitter out with. But everybody gets so caught up in the max exit velocity number. And yeah, it's important. And his was 95.6 from that St. Louis event. But what I want to bring up with that is his average. and it really stands out to me. And his average is 91.1. To me, the average exit velocity is more important, or it should be valued extremely high as a hitter. Whether you have an 88 mile an hour exit velocity or a 98 mile an hour exit velocity, I want to see personally that average as close to your max as possible. To me, it's worrisome. We'll see a guy that has a 101 max exit velocity and his average is down at like 88. So, okay, so he pieced together, one or two really hard hit balls in a round of 10, off a machine or off a guy throwing BP as down the middle and as easy to hit as possible, versus a guy who, okay, maybe he's not as strong as that guy that got that 98 mile an hour exit velocity, so maybe it's 88, but he's on 88 every time. It's 86, 87, 88, 87, 86, and his average is 86.5 and his max is 88. That stands out to me because that's somebody that can control the barrel and that can make consistent hard contact. And that goes like the same with catcher pop times. Everybody wants to be a sub 2.0 pop time. Okay, so you flash one that's a 197, and then you have a range from 197 to 2.2 because, 3 of 5 throws you couldn't get a grip on. You were rushing way too fast. They didn't hit the target. They, took 3 hops to get to second base. Rather than that guy that is repeatable, he's quick but not in a rush, and it's, 207, 208, 208, 209, 206. And they're all, his range is 206 to 209 and he's on the bag every time. It's like, okay, like, yeah, do I wish, I could see you flash a 199? Sure. Like, but I want consistent, like we want guys that can repeat. And that's, to me, the average is so important. And he also launched one 351 as his max distance. So he's got plenty of bat strength. He was on the barrel with authority. And I know that's a long-winded call out, Peter, but these guys, they don't, I think they get so caught up in, let me see how hard I can throw a ball into a net. Let me see how hard I can hit a ball off a tee. But it's like, no, let's see how frequently we can repeat a good swing with bat speed, with minimal effort, with bat speed, with bat strength, and who can repeat it and be on the barrel. Because let's be honest, it's a BP round. And if you're not on the barrel a decent amount of BP, that's probably a problem. If you're that inconsistent and not on the barrel, so that's something that I definitely look for.
No, that's a great call out. I mean, it's obvious, right, Drew? Like when someone is clearly just trying to put up a number versus showing their feel to hit, and they're still on the barrel, and it's we would rather see 92 exit velo with a 93 max versus like 100 and then like 78, right? Because like it's 100%. Clear, like I could probably go up there and hit the ball as hard as I can and have it be like somewhat impressive, but I was terrible at hitting. I was a pitcher. It's like and then I like how you
go ahead. Sorry.
No,
I've seen you swing the golf club. I know you've got bat speed. There's got to be bat speed in there because you create a ton of club head speed with the golf club. But yeah, go ahead.
A lot of swing and miss. But I like the pop time call out too, because I remember a couple of years ago at a preseason All-State, I was talking with one of the kids. I'm not going to say who it was, but he was like kind of bummed out that his pop time wasn't as good as everyone else's that day. It was like a 195. Like every single one was like a 194 to like a 198 or something like that. And he was bummed because some guys were like better than that, but they were like cheating. And I was like, well, dude, your pop times are legit. Like those are, and they're so close together too, that the other kids were like 1.8 to like 2 something because they're rushing, they're cheating. It's like on video, you're just going to look the best. And he ended up being, I don't know what he finished up as, but like a top 2 for sure catcher in that class. And he's at the Division I level right now and doing really well. So,
and
it's not
you just said it. Well, you just said it, and I think it's a great point. Okay, yeah, we don't have a hitter in the box when we're doing pop times or a way to, make sure that it's the truest in-game pop time ever. And can kids slightly gain an advantage here or there? Possibly. But I will say, like, when we're throwing the catcher pop times or we're setting it up with our machine, like, we're trying to throw the ball low in the zone to make it harder to cheat, so they have to stay down on that ball. They can't get that the pitch out type of pitch that you would see to get that, really cheaty type pop time. But you said we video. So any college coach, like, okay, they're going to see the pop time. They're going to know it's in a showcase setting. Let me watch the video and let me see what the actions look like. Let me see, is he down in his crouch? Is he catching the ball first? What does his glove to hand exchange look like? What's the arm action? What's the flight of the ball? Because all of that stuff in reality is more important. How flexible your hips are when you're receiving those pop times. Your glove action, how soft are your hands? That is more important than a 198, a 192, a 197. It's what is playable. What will a coach see? Let me say, hey, you got a 192 on your, on your profile, and then I go and I click into the video, and man, you're staying down. You're showing me flexible hips. You're catching that ball right, and you're just exploding out of the crouch, and you've got a huge arm, and it's like, okay, like that's a true 192. Like these coaches get it. And they know, they see it. It's not about, hey, let me, crow hop on the infield and throw 88. They're going to watch the video and they're going to be like, he's shuffling 3 times. Give us playable actions. Yeah, we want to see 88 across the infield, but it better be playable. Like we can see that. So I know we're kind of going off topic there, but I think those things are so important because that is what my mind thinks when I see a guy crow hop 4 times on the infield because he's trying to get a number. It's thinking that's not playable. The runner is safe, and also half the time that throw's not accurate. So I know that's I get like a chuckle out of that or whatever, but it's reality. And I want these guys to know, I want these players to know that come to the showcases, yes, we want you to put up numbers. We want you to PR. We want you to do all these things, but we're looking for what's a playable swing, what's playable actions, what's playable behind the plate and all that stuff.
And one more thing with Mick, he is from Teutopolis, which they're going to be a team to probably check out this spring. They have Austin Bories, who's a 26, committed to Lindenwood. And then Gavin Addis is another 2026 arm that's talented for them. And I'm sure that they have many more guys that we aren't sure of yet. But Teutopolis will be a team to check out this spring.
That is a storied program. There's a couple at that 2A level. Immediately I think of T-Town, Teutopolis. I think of St. Joe Ogden and what they've done these past couple years. I know Joliet Catholic was 2A for a while. Then you got Pleasant Plains out there that had a really good run for a while.
Monticello last year.
Yes, absolutely. Same with 1A. I always think of Ottawa Marquette. There's these different programs, but no, there are players always coming out of Teutopolis. So that's
yeah. So my uncommitted prospect of the week actually is Matthew Swartz from Monticello, and I saw him last spring because I went and saw Monticello quite a bit because they were in our Power 25. They were undefeated for a really long time. I can't remember their exact record and how many games they had won in a row. I don't know if you guys.
I just know they had Luke Teschke and they had Ike Young. And man, when you're talking about, any program that has those 2 arms, you're going to be successful. But then when you start thinking, okay, this is a 2A program that can hang their hat on that. And they had other guys besides that. They had a real catcher and Eli Kraft. And I know the one you're going to mention right now, Matthew Swartz, but that's what really stood out to me is you got Luke Teschke going to Illinois State, 2-way guy, and Ike Young, who just kind of came out of nowhere, and the sky's the limit for him. So sorry for jumping in.
And Ike Young's going to Illinois. No, you're good. Ike Young committed to Illinois. So
Monticello.
Yeah, they had a really good spring, and I went and saw them quite a bit last year. And Matthew Swartz was one of those guys who was hitting 1 or 2 in their lineup. Sometimes he was 5th. It just kind of changed around, but he's an outfielder for them, and he's a left-handed bat, and the biggest thing for me is he's just an athlete. You look at him at the plate, a left-handed hitter with a really fluid swing, super loose wrist. I was watching his video from the state games the other day, and it was a super easy swing. And if you look at his metrics, his exit velo might not be super high. He's still got a lot of time to get better. But when Drew was talking about Gavin Terry earlier in the podcast, it kind of made me think of Matthew Schwartz when he was talking about that guy that he's an athlete and he has those loose wrists. He was on the barrel during his round. And that's what Matthew Schwartz reminds me of. Just a guy that flicks his wrists through the zone. He's an athlete, 6'9" runner. And I had not seen him, in a showcase event when I was watching him in the spring. But like I mentioned, I just really liked him with the bat, the way that he moved, his movement patterns. And that's super important. Like, is just, are they an athlete? Do they look the part? And then after that, it's like, all right, let's try and figure out some of these metrics that they may have. We ended up seeing him at the state games, and uncommitted kid, 2025 from Monticello.
He was a guy, I remember when you saw them play this spring too, Gavin, because his video stood out. You had video of him, hitting in one of those games, and exactly like you said, like it's how it should look. And he's only going to get better as he gets stronger and more mature. And those are the type of things that we're looking for. Like, what attributes do you have that are going to allow you to continue to improve? And he's got those movement patterns. He's got the kind of swing that could just continue to play up.
Yeah. Well, that's our uncommitted prospects of the week. One more thing before we finish here that I wanted to just mention is our preseason ID events. We have 10 on our schedule. So if you go to our website, the Illinois page specifically, and you click showcases and then click on upcoming showcases, you'll see all of our open events, all of our events for the winter, but we have 10 open events, and 2 of those events are out of state. One is in Kenosha up in Wisconsin, and then one is in St. Louis. But they're just great opportunities for Kenosha, those northern suburb kids, to get to a closer event that maybe we don't have in that area as much. And then for Southern Illinois kids, we have a preseason ID in Southern Illinois, but maybe some of those St. Louis Metro East kids, it's easier for them to go to St. Louis. So 10 events, open events, and then we have some invite-onlys in the pro case and our preseason all states, but just wanted to shout those out really quick too. So
we try to do the best we can with getting around to all this, all the different areas in the states, and a lot of it is facility dependent. But you mentioned the Southern Illinois event coming just down by the Edwardsville area. It's technically in Wood River, beautiful facility down there that we would love to see as many of those Southern Illinois products as possible to really know who we need to, follow in the spring. Maybe some guys we never knew about. We love the pop-up guys. And then Peoria has been one of my favorite events in the winter for a long time because there's guys that pop at that event every single year. There's just so much good baseball throughout the state. And then we run a bunch of events around the Chicagoland area that hit different pockets as well. And all of it feeds into the same thing. Like, if we see you, if we get our eyes on you and we know about you, we're going to have a chance to follow you. We're going to have a chance to highlight you. We're going to have a chance to get you to invite-only events that are going to, put you in the positions that you're trying to get in. But the more we know about you and the better you are, the better chance we have to talk about you and the more you give us to talk about. And Pete, I know you were going to maybe chime in here.
No, I was just going to say, Gav posted a really good story the other day, kind of breaking down each event and like a little history of each event, like kind of what you get. I thought it was really cool. So if you're kind of interested, like why should I go to this event versus this event, I think you should check out that story. It was really interesting. Yeah,
appreciate that, Pete. Yeah, it's a great opportunity to come to these events. So excited to see everybody this winter. Yeah, and now we'll kind of transition into the interview with Coach Reynolds over there at Tennessee.
All right, guys. Well, I'm extremely excited here to welcome on somebody that I've been lucky enough to get close with over the last couple years. He is a tremendous baseball guy, been around the game a long time. Currently now, he is the Director of Operations and Pitching Development at the University of Tennessee. Came over there from Cincinnati, spent some time at Northwestern before that, Kansas State, Evansville. He is a Jefferson City, Missouri product. Welcome on Josh Reynolds here. Thanks for joining us, Josh.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you were a guy that I think is a very unique guest for us, somebody we definitely wanted to have on. You have been a college coach for a long time, but you also have dipped your waters into the PBR landscape. So, depending on how much you want to get into that or share with everybody, I think that's something that we as a staff are really just curious with, and maybe what you can express to parents and players out there just right out of the gate. Just some things that when, 2022 you took over as the Prep Baseball Colorado scouting director. It was 22 or 23, somewhere around there. But were there any things that maybe were misconceptions that you even had about PBR before you kind of went behind the curtain and saw how everything was done? Was there any just major takeaway that you had in your time with PBR?
I don't think there's any misconceptions. I think it was more of just like the work that gets put into it, like from being on the other side of the fence, right? When you're a coach going to watch an event, you see, the showcase, you see the ground balls, you see the BP, you see the pitchers throwing. I think what I didn't realize, and I knew it had to get there somehow, I just didn't know how it got there, but to the website, the metrics or, the 60 times or whatever it may be. I think it was more of just the work that goes in on the backside, from putting the events together, from just getting the registration, getting the jerseys, getting the numbers, just kind of the hassle that seemed to be before each event, but you wanted to make sure you had it right before the setup, to running the event, to making sure that the event went smooth. Obviously, you guys know with technology, it doesn't always go smooth, so just being able to you know work on the fly at sometimes, with TrackMan, like, hey, give me 5 seconds here. Let me adjust this thing, or give me blast, give me 5 minutes. I got to figure this out, right? So I think just figuring out how everything worked, right, and then how it was put together, and then most of the time, you ran a good event, and then you had to go home, and then you had to make sure your numbers were correct, and everything gets added to the website, and then you take that information and turn it into your post-event stories, so just seeing like the whole landscape of what PBR is and what it's trying to do for each individual that shows up to the event, from running the best event possible to then trying to promote each participant from the event and get them out there for whatever university, college to see them.
You brought up a couple really good points there. And just in general, talking to, Sean Duncan back when this, prep baseball was somewhat exploding, we were, growing into a number of different states, and finding the right scouting director has always been something that is vital to the success of the state. And me personally, like, I think there's no better candidate for a scouting director than a former college coach, especially somebody that's maybe done JUCO or volunteered and they really like fully understand the grind. But one thing that he always talks about is it's hard to take like the dugout out of that person or out of that coach. Like they want to compete, they want to be in the dugout with the guys. I think you're kind of that prime example, right? Like you were in a little in between period. You tried out PBR, but then you had a great situation arise at Cincinnati. So like what were some of the major factors at Cincinnati? Because before you went to Tennessee, you did have a little stopgap here at Cincinnati. Like what were some of the draws that got you kind of, out of being the Colorado scouting director and back into that college coaching game?
Well, it was kind of an interesting situation because being out in Colorado, like first of all, I loved it. Like PBR was awesome. It was fun. The people I work with from my crew that helped me with the events, just one good dudes, but then also baseball guys, right, who understood the task of like what a PBR event was and wanted to make sure we ran it to the level that it should be. So just, showing up to the field, setting everything up, hanging out with those guys, like it was fun. Then going to the games in the spring, and getting to, you see the players at the event, but then actually like putting the evaluation part into it from the game aspect, right? Of like how they play the game. That way, you were a better scouting director because now if somebody called you on them, you could say, okay, this is what I see, this is who they are. But then also the part of being on the field with them, getting to know them a little bit, right? Not just like, hey, they're a person out there on the field, and you're as a coach, you're trying to figure out who they are. Like I could talk to them, I could ask them questions, I could see how they were acting on the field. I could, talk to them after a game, working for PBR of like, hey man, you threw the ball well today. And, like I could see like the maturity of you didn't, have that mental breakdown that you might have had a year ago, but now you're developed and you matured in that area as opposed to just on the field from a baseball standpoint. So you could kind of like talk to them, get to know them a little bit. Where it, that whole experience, like I was enjoying that, right? And then from a college coaching standpoint, sometimes the family gets put aside, unfortunately, and you're traveling, you're recruiting. So I was getting to hang out with my family a lot more and spending time with just, my sister lived out in Colorado, so I was getting to hang out with them, and that was the first time in man, I don't know, 10 years or so where we actually, I think we got closer just by, being able to go hang out with her, right? Because I hadn't seen her just from being a college coach as much. So a lot of good things about Colorado, and it's Colorado, right? Living in Colorado it's just awesome. A lot to do out there. Even in the year that I experienced it, it was just like waking up to the mountains. It was like, this is really cool, you know? So, but the crazy thing about that is I wasn't looking. Like I wasn't putting my name out there. I wasn't throwing my resume around, like trying to get back in the game. I got a random phone call from Jordan Bishel, the head coach at Cincinnati, and was just, hey, are you interested? You know, and when that happens, it was like, I got to talk to the wife, you know, there's another move potentially happening. Um, and your kids are getting old enough to where you got to start thinking about, you know, hey, they're in school now, they're fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade. It's like that's a tough time for them to start moving. So I had to make some decisions on the whole process. But I think just talking to Coach Bishop, and when I said talk to him, like I'd never talked to him before, so that's what it was weird. Like I just got the phone call and I never talked to him. I hadn't even met him. I knew who he was because I knew what he was doing at Central Michigan, and that he was winning games and was a good head coach, and his name was up for some jobs, but I had never spoken with him. And get to talk to him, a couple times, and the next thing you know, it's, hey, you wanna come out and do this? So that's where I had to make the decision, right? And then, going back to like in between where I was at Northwestern as the interim head coach, I don't get the job. Sean Duncan, the president of PBR, says, hey, I want you to do this, and kind of takes care of me. So you kind of felt torn in between there because I've known the people at PBR for a long time and they're good people, right? So I think that was kind of the hard thing. So it wasn't just an easy decision just to jump back in, and it wasn't necessarily you missed the dugout and all that. I think the only thing I really missed, in that year was just the relationship with the players, right? And some people forget that it's like they are players, they are going through life and they are trying to develop as men, right? Also, not just as baseball players. So, just the camaraderie you create in the bullpen, right? Or in the dugout during the game, or even after practice is over there and you're sitting in the team room and watching them play ping pong and getting to know each other, right? Like those are the things that you kind of miss. Like obviously the games were fun, they were competitive, it was good to be on the field. But I think the biggest thing I missed was, just the daily interactions with guys. From that standpoint, but no, it was a tough decision for me. And I was, for other guys, it might have been like, hey, I'm trying to get out. No, I liked it. It was fun. It was enjoyable. I was still doing baseball. I was getting to do some other things that I was not able to do as a baseball coach, is, in regards to hanging out with family, doing some things there. So it was a tough decision. But Cincinnati was, going into the Big 12, new coaching staff. I knew the facilities. I'd been on campus there many times recruiting at PBR events, whether in Ohio. So it was something that I was kind of familiar with. It was more of just, what did I need to do at that time? And I didn't feel like I was done coaching yet. Um, Kind of wanted to get back in and see what we could do, and it was a good experience. And I had told my wife that it had to be something that was right before we would just pick up and move again. And when you talked to Coach Bishop and got to know him and saw the staff that he was putting together and the people that I was going to be working with, the administration from Cincinnati was kind of like, I got to do this.
Well, another just answer that gives me a ton of takeaways there. One being Coach Bishop calls you out of nowhere, never met you. It just speaks to the reputation that you've built in this game. Really, really impressive. You're out there doing the PBR Colorado stuff, and you're a hot commodity on the coaching front. Second, and I think we talk about this a lot in our podcast, is exactly what you talked about. That is a benefit of working with prep baseball is you get way more of that on-field connection with players that these college coaches don't have the luxury to get. Whether it's, coaching these guys at the future games is one of my favorite things because you're in the dugout for multiple days. Over a course of 4 days, like you're going to see some true colors come out. You can kind of fake it for a day or two. But you're going to see who these players really are. How on that day 4, the last game of the week, like they've been in the 95-degree heat, the humidity, like, are they still getting down the line? Are they still running in and out of the dugout? Like, are they still a good teammate? Are they selfish? All those things. And I think that, is something that I think we do hold a valuable piece there of information that these college coaches are trying to find out. And we are a really good, unbiased, resource for them to use. So I love that point of it because I do think that is something that maybe not enough people realize. Because let me ask you this, like as a college coach, you're going to see the guy because you think he's good. You think, you like the swing, you like the tools, whatever it may be. So like I'm guessing you're looking for these things on the field that as a prep baseball, scouting director, you already kind of know like what's the motor, what's the IQ level, how's this guy play the game? Are those really the things that as a college coach you're looking for, or is it a variety of things? And I hope that question makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I think what you're looking for as a college coach, and it's different everywhere, right? Like every school, every program has, kind of their own blueprint of what they're looking for and how they're building their team together. So ultimately, it's about the right fit. But what you usually start out with is like, how do they play the game, right? Like that's why we want to go see them play the game. It's the I think the thing is like with PBR and running the events, like from my aspect and how I try to put it together when I was especially when it comes to rankings time, right? Like probably the toughest part of working at PBR, right? That month is just you're stuck at your computer trying to move this guy here, this guy there, and you're trying to figure out why. And it's so fine between each player. It may be I saw this guy play, and just like you said, his motor puts him above this next guy. It's not even a metric. It's just the way he played the game, and maybe it's just the position that he played, a shortstop versus a right fielder, right? Like, so you guys know, like that's a tough month of putting those together. And you want to try to do it right and do it the best you possibly can. So I think like you see that side of it from the metrics and all that. But like as a coach, you still go watch kids play the game. You want to see them play the game. We're not just going and saying, hey, his exit velo is this. We have to have this guy, right? Like you have to be able to see, can he turn that exit velo over and turn it into bat to ball skill in a game? Can he, control the AB? Does he swing and get himself out? Does he swing and miss, right? Like all of those things kind of come into play. And, same with the pitcher, right? Velocity just starts there. And yes, they have to have something that you want to see, but you still want to take what you see from like an event and turn it into, can they play the game and can they help you? And especially now with, the way recruiting is gonna change with the new rules potentially is just guys are gonna have to be more ready to play, right? So now you have to like be able to not just project a couple years down the road, but right now, can they play right now? So it's gonna change some things. You're gonna want to see guys playing games, and then ultimately it's still gonna come down to yes, there's going to be projection, but where are they from a physical maturity standpoint, a mentality standpoint? Like, are they strong enough there? Can they handle those areas? Because those are usually the two biggest things is the physical maturity, and then the mentality of if guys can handle playing as a younger freshman in college. And then, just putting that all together and can they play the game at a high level? Can they get outs? Can they make the plays when the ball is hit to them? Can they, put together a good at bat 3 or 4 times a game? Those are the things that are ultimately still matter when you're looking at like recruiting and how things go from that standpoint.
Well, you're hitting on a lot of things that we've touched on in past episodes, and what makes the rankings so hard and how these guys shouldn't get so caught up in what that number is because we may have seen them on their best day ever or their worst day ever, and the variety of looks is so different. But I want to open this up to our guys, Tyler, Gavin, Peter. Like you came up with a bunch of good questions here. I'm just gonna open it up. Who wants to go first? Get in there. I know we do have some evaluation questions, but Gavin.
Yeah, Coach. I'm gonna get into kind of an evaluation question. When you are out specifically evaluating a pitcher, what are some of those qualities that you're looking for in that player? Whether it's velo or just the way they move, things like that.
Yeah, I think ultimately it starts with do they get the ball in the zone, right? Like, um, the game starts and with the pitcher and the kind of the flow of the game starts with the pitcher. So can they get the ball in the zone? Do they have a secondary pitch that they can throw for strikes? They don't like we see a lot of guys now, they think they have 5, 6 pitches, right? Everybody's got a cutter, everybody's got a slider, a curveball, a splitter, a changeup, a fastball. That's great, right? Like we you like guys that like kind of want to play with some different pitches. They're going to find out what's best for them. But ultimately, like when the game's going on, you need 2 pitches to get people out, right? Can you command your fastball? Does to into the strike zone, and do you have a secondary pitch, whether that's a slider, a curveball, a changeup, whatever it may be, to get people out, right? To keep hitters off balance. And then can you how often do you pound the zone with that? Can you control the count? So it starts there. Obviously, velocity is important from that standpoint. Like there's not a certain number that says, hey, this guy's throwing this, we have to like this guy or whatever. But it gets it started, from that standpoint. And then I think it goes to the athleticism, and I think like sometimes people get kind of confused when we say about athleticism of a pitcher, right? We're not necessarily talking about their 60 time and what they run from that. It's what do they do on the mound? What do they do in that small space when they pick their leg up? So when it hits the ground, does their body move well? Can they repeat that somewhat consistent, right? To where they can get the ball in the zone. I think that's athleticism in small space for the pitcher. Is kind of what we're talking about in that. And obviously, like, if they can run and jump and all that, like that's a great thing too. It helps them out from their further development. But I think it's just how the body moves. Is usually what we're talking about from that standpoint. The arm speed. Um, and then I think it comes down to just the competitiveness of them, right? So, like what happens, and that's the thing, like when you go out and watch games, that's why we try to see as many games as possible, is what happens when an umpire makes a bad call. Does that turn into 3 or 4 balls the next pitch? What happens when there's an error behind them? Do they get mad at the shortstop for making that, or do they say, I got you, and they move on, and the next pitch is in the strike zone? What happens after, a home run? Is the next pitch in the strike zone or is it 3-0 automatically, right? Like those are things that we want to see, because if it's boom, 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 and it's just strikes after strike after strike, no matter what the situation is, they're competitive. And it's not that competitive is not, you strike somebody out and you have to show them up. Competitive is like, hey, let's go. Next guy. It's the battle between the pitcher and the hitter, and they're out there trying to win that. And no matter what happens, they don't lose focus of what their job is, and then I think the next part of that just kind of goes to like after the ball leaves their hand, what do they become? Do they understand the game of baseball? Do they know where they're supposed to be on when the ball's put in play? Can they feel the bunt? Can they get over and cover first base? I think all of those things matter when we talk about guys coming into a school, because the guys who can do all of those things usually have, a faster track to finding innings there that first year.
And then I guess, sorry, Drew, if
No,
you
no,
got
that
something,
was
but
outstanding. Yeah, what do you got, Kevin?
kind of one more question off of that. Like, what is something that every day a high school arm, like a guy that's wanting to continue to develop and get better, what is one thing that they could do every day that would maybe help them, develop and become a better pitcher and
Yeah,
prospect?
I don't know that there's one thing specific that I would come up with. I would say just find something to get better at every day. Right? So, being a pitcher, it's like it's one of those things where like we can't go into the cage and just take swings and swings and swings and swings, right? So, whether that be dry reps, mental reps, something in the weight room, right? Like mobility, like find something to get better. I think just having a routine and a plan is probably the biggest thing for high school guys. I think you see that it's a lot better now, right? Like when I played, it was like you went from basketball to baseball or football to basketball to baseball. And then you just kind of showed up and it's like, all right, now you got to get into baseball shape. Where you see a lot of guys now, they are starting to develop some sort of like a training towards baseball. But sometimes I wonder what is going on. Are we just going to the weight room just to lift? Are we going just to throw, or what are we really working on? You see guys that, their velo is in a good spot, but they're still training velo when they struggle to throw a secondary pitch for a strike, right? Like find the thing that you need to work on. And I think paying attention to those things are the other things that matter. But I don't know if it's necessarily one specific thing because I mean, each guy, whether it be nutrition, right? Like learning how to eat, right? That's a big thing for guys of learning how to eat. Making sure you're getting the meals you need each day to put the fuel in your body to be able to make those gains in the weight room. In the weight room of developing, like I remember, like shoot, man, I can't say that I was every time I went in the weight room, I just got after it. Like, I mean, I've been the same weight basically since I was 20 years old. And it's one of those things where like what do you put into it? Like going into the weight room when you're lifting with a team and some buddies versus going in and by yourself, like it's make it competitive when you do that, right? Like don't just go in and lift and say, hey, just check the box if I got it done. Like, did you get done what you needed to do to where you felt like you got better, from, your pre-stretch routine when you're throwing just, on a random day, like make sure you do that the same way you would before pregame because you need to get your body prepped and ready to go. I think just honing in on everything to make yourself and finding that routine that's good for you, and making sure that it's like the right one for you is probably the thing that you need to do. So it's I don't know if it's a specific area like, hey, if you do this every day, you're gonna be better. I think it's finding something every time you do something to where it can make you better.
Uh, Gavin, I would think a lot of high school athletes should be able to come away with plenty to work on after that. And just having a consistent plan and doing it every day. I mean, that got me kind of fired up. Like I need to go hit the weight room right now, Josh. And I
It's
need it.
me too. Me too.
I want to give you your flowers from your playing days and playing career. So I mentioned Jefferson City is where you graduated high school. You went to Central Missouri. You guys made it to the College World Series twice in 1998, 2000. You also are the career record holder for wins with 34. I hope that still stands. Some records may be meant to be broken, but not that one. Like let's keep that one standing for you. But you obviously were a really high level prospect, or at least you turned into that in college. You were a third round draft by the New York Mets out of Central Missouri, a Division two. What were some things that were key to you to get to that level? We were talking a little bit before we came on here, and you mentioned that you were kind of a two pitch guy in high school for a while. So, was it developing a third pitch? Was it something you learned in college? Walk us through just a little bit of your timeline in your career.
So it's my career is interesting, right? Like I was more of a position player in high school. I threw 6 innings my high school career, right? We had some other guys that were better than me. They were Division I type prospects when you talk about Missouri State, Missouri. And I was fine with that. Like I didn't care. I would just wanted to play the game, right? Like I just like it was baseball. Just like let me play, get me on the field. I played center field my senior year. I was in right field my junior year. And I was okay with that. Like I just wanted to win, compete, play the game, and have that experience. And I wish you wouldn't have said the dates that we went to the World Series. It shows how old I am now. But back then it was more of like there was no PBR, there was no recruiting service that was like putting stuff out across the nation. So recruiting was more regional, right? And shoot, I'll even date myself a little more. There was no map, so you had to actually pull the map out, and coaches had to know where they were going. They had to figure it out. So we had local tournaments. We get out of the state of Missouri a few times, but not very often. But that's kind of kind of the recruiting scene then. So I that was Central Missouri was my only option. That was the only school that recruited me. And it was after my senior year in high school, we played a tournament in Sedalia, Missouri, and that's where Sean McCann, an ex-PBR Kansas guy, saw me, and basically I finished pitching. He came come walking over to me after the game. You need to come on a visit. I went on a visit, and within that week, I was going to Central Missouri. But I think the biggest thing for me was I was a young high school senior. I should have been a class below me from an age standpoint, and I was, like my maturity physically didn't happen until I got to college. So I think the biggest thing was I got to be in a program with, Brad Hill, Coach Hill. He's kind of my mentor from a, just a coaching baseball standpoint. Just being in a program with him of like, hey, this is what, and it back then it was like, I don't know if it was the best, but it was a program for us, right? Like it made us tougher. We had to be in the weight room 3 times a week. We conditioned 3 times a week, and whether it was baseball specific or not, it didn't matter. It made us better, made us tougher because we had to get through it. And then, the class that I came into when I was a freshman, I mean, if you looked at the offensive numbers from those guys, that my first year, it was unreal from a home run. That was back when we played with whether they drop 5 bats. So you had to, the exit velo was probably 200 miles an hour on some guys, some days when I was
Yeah,
pitching,
I would
but
not want to
just
have pitched in that day and age. That could not have been fun.
no, it seems pretty close to it right now though when I see some of these balls being hit. But just like having those guys, one from just a leadership standpoint on the team, but then also two of having to pitch to those guys, work through a lineup, and kind of develop and learn as a pitcher, of trying to get those guys out. So I think that's part of like, sometimes it's like, like you say you want to be successful and all that is like put yourself around successful people because they're going to make you better, right? Like that's what happened to me as a pitcher is I had to face the lineup that we had and the players that we had. So then anytime we played somebody else, it was like this. And I don't want to sound arrogant, but it was like, dude, this is easy compared to facing our lineup. These guys, our guys were really good, and it was righty lefty. You had to be able to pitch and mix. And then, like you said, yeah, no, I was a two pitch guy. I was fastball changeup until my junior year. Like I had a curveball, but it was really generic. Used it occasionally, but um, putting that together and kind of seeing that, hey, I can get guys out with these two. I knew I needed one more if you're talking about from because I was 86, 88 my freshman year to then 90 my junior year to then 92, 94, I guess is what it ended up being my junior year, but I had to get something else. Knew I needed another pitch if I was going to, pitch at the next level, not just at college. So like what we were talking about earlier, it's like we didn't have TrackMan, we didn't have these ball tracking, tools to utilize. So you had to do it the old-fashioned way, where you found a grip, you started to throw it, and I remember a couple times getting Coach Hill into the box, and he was a lefty, and so having him stand in there and say, "Hey, what do you think? Is it any good?" And it just him giving me, yeah, like a little flat, little this, little that, whatever, and then you have to kind of take that and kind of turn it into a pitch. And apparently it ended up being okay, because I threw it a lot that year and utilized it, and it kind of propelled me, I'd say, probably into getting drafted where I did.
I wrote down a couple notes as you were talking there because no, I'm of age to where I remember MapQuest. I remember having to print out the directions. I remember having to pull
Oh
the
yeah.
atlas out of the glove box and help navigate my dad on road trips. And yeah, a lot of the generation now has no clue what that's all about. And all that age does is just provide you wisdom, and it's clear as day. Just listening to you talk, you are extremely buttoned up, and I'm learning a ton just talking to you. One thing I did not know was that you were a two-way prospect. And it sounds like you were a multi-sport athlete. And that's something we have been harping on a ton and how it's changed in today's day and age. It's become harder and harder to be a multi-sport athlete, to play both ways, pitch and play a position. And everything is so specialized. I mean, is that something you're throughout your coaching career, recruiting, like, is that something that you look at a player different or you value him at a different level than a pitcher only? Does it depend? I mean, what's your viewpoint on that?
So first I'll clarify. I played football to my freshman year, and then I decided to move on to just basketball and baseball. Our school was like 10 state championships. It was the option, the triple option, and
Dang.
I was the quarterback, and I wanted to throw. I didn't want to get hit every play. So after my freshman year, I was like, all right, I'm done. So multi being basketball, baseball is kind of what I did. But yeah, no, I think I think what happens now is people get scared of missing out on something, right? Like, if I don't do this, then I'm going to get behind. And I can see it, right? There's two sides to it, right? Like there's some guys that, play multiple sports is not going to hurt them. There's some guys that probably need to train and develop and continue to work on their game a little bit more to get to the level that they want to have the opportunity to play college sports, right? Like it's not a given. Like just because you play, you look at the statistics between high school to college, from college to pro, it's very, very minimal, like who gets the opportunity. So I get both sides of it. I think the difference is in that time when I was going through high school was just the norm, right? So now the norm has changed to, hey, I got to be more specific. Fear of missing out of on something if I don't, go to this tournament. I think, obviously certain high schools it's different too, right? Of like, unfortunately between the different coaching staffs of, hey, you need to be at football weights, you need to do this, you need to do that at basketball, you need to be on these travel, circuits where we can like evaluate you and see how you're gonna compare to the other guys on the team. I think you get torn in different ways and everybody doesn't have the same agenda for you. Everybody's kind of worried about their agenda as opposed to what's best for the kids. So I think that gets in the way sometimes. So I think it's just different for each kid, right? I like seeing it because it teaches you, different kind of athleticism for each sport. But then it's also just like football, that's toughness, right? That's toughness and strength, right? Like you get on a football field, if you find out real quick who's tough. Basketball, you got the agility, and then you turn that over into baseball. And just like, I think the main thing is like you're competitive, you're competitive, you're competitive, right? Like I think what happens is we lose that competition when you just go specific to where it's hard. Like if you're just in the weight room, you need to try to train and be competitive with somebody. When you're playing catch each day, you need to, because you just don't get that same feel if you're not doing it. And I think to me, like ultimately, that's what I was about, just like compete. And I still do. Like I'm old, and I still think I can go get all these hitters out at Tennessee. But I can't. I know I can't. But in my head, I feel that, right? Like that's just who I was. If we're gonna play checkers, like, I'm trying to beat you, right? Like I don't care. It's not just fun. Like so, and that was kind of my nature, my mentality of like I wanted to win, and I still want to win. If I'm playing my son at ping pong right now, I'm probably going to let him score a couple points, but I'm going to beat him too, right? Like that's just who I am. But that's I think that's what I was able to like. I never took off from competing, right? And I think that's still the biggest thing in sports today is like just learning how to compete, learning how to fail, learning how to lose and deal with it, and find something that you have to get better in each sport. And I think when you break it down to just one, it's like baseball can be boring, from that standpoint of just training. So what am I really getting better, or did I just go out and throw today? Right? Did I do what I needed to do to get better, or did I just go out and go hit in the cage and do the drills that make me feel good, or did I actually challenge myself? Or if I'm on the basketball court and I'm playing, it's if I'm not up today and ready to go, then I get beat. I get dunked on, right? Like that's not what I want to happen. So you kind of keep that. And I think those are the things that each individual is specific. Can you do it? Does it make sense for you to do it? Um, does your situation allow it? But ultimately, I think, if you want to do it and it's something that you've done, keep doing it. I don't think it hurts you.
No, great stuff there. And I want to open it back up, guys, to anybody that has a question here. And also, just shout out Central Missouri. There's a lot of, we talked about this too, Josh, as you jumped on. A lot of just prep baseball report former workers or guys who are currently in the industry with us that have ties to Central Missouri. Andy Urban, Kevin Mulder, Brett Schwartz down there in Oklahoma. So just quite a coaching prep baseball tree coming out of Central Missouri there. Peter, I see you got yourself ready to rock and roll here with a question. What do you got for Coach Reynolds?
Yeah, I just like something I've noticed in the past few years, Tennessee's really started to get involved in Illinois, like recruiting, especially recently. Um, can you speak to maybe why that is, and if we can expect to see that continue in the future? Because I know like the Southern schools for a while, at least like when I was growing up, we were told like, yeah, they kind of just stay down there, they don't come up here. But it seems like lately they've been, recruiting a lot more up north.
I think you see that in a lot of places. It's not just Tennessee, right? Like you're seeing the SEC go up north and grab players. You see, it's just I think it's part of what we talked about earlier, right? Is like back when I did it, was more regional, and you're talking about your state and just like the areas that are connecting. Where now, like I can pull up my computer, I can go look at Drew's top 25 list or top 50 list or whatever. And now like I can build a familiarity with that player. And now it's like, hey, we need to follow this guy, right? Like this guy has the tools that we're looking for. And then, with the tournaments being kind of all over the place, you go down to Lake Point in Georgia, you're seeing teams from all over the country, right? So now it's like I don't think it's just specific to a certain area anymore. It's like where are the good players, and you try to go find them, right? And Tennessee has a brand that is open up to basically the country, right? I mean, they won the national championship last year, and it's been like the hottest program over the last few years. And I think it's one of those things where like when kids see that and they're really interested in college baseball, like you're not limited by geographics anymore. It's kind of open to wherever.
And another school that was getting into Illinois a lot was a school you were just at, Cincinnati, doing an outstanding job. And I just wanted to call them out as well because they just keep collecting quality commitments from Illinois, and recently Enzo and Felice, just committed there, and they've got a bunch of arms in the 25 class. Connor Blue and Brandon Menser, and I think both Sefcik boys are there now as well. And Cal was a huge fan favorite of mine, so you just seem to be going from quality program to quality program. But I want to open it back up. Tyler, Gavin, Peter. Tyler, it looks like you got a question here.
Yeah, Coach, you talked earlier a little bit about with some of the new rule changes, how it's important for guys to be ready to play right away now, and I know the roster constrictions is kind of like a hot button topic now, as well as just any of the rule changes anymore for you college coaches. So maybe just talk through for the listener some of the challenges of being a college coach today, whether it's all of the rule changes, maybe it's the travel. I know as a college coach you're out there all the time when you guys aren't playing. So just talk through some of those challenges.
It's challenges for everybody, right? It's a challenge for the family, it's a challenge for coaches, the player. It's just a challenge right now. One, because we just don't have clarity, right? It's like what is actually going to happen, right? Like, so we've heard all the talk, but when is this going to be coming into place? Like, like I think those are probably the biggest challenges right now from a coaching standpoint of just what is it going to look like next week? What is it going to look like next month? And I think those are probably because the conversations have to be had, right? Like you go from a 40-man roster to a 34-man roster, like there has to be some tough conversations in there, and it's not fun. Like then that's not a fun thing to have to do, right? Because there's players that lives are going to change, and maybe they picked the university for the an academic standpoint, and maybe they picked it because a family member went there. It's just the school they want, and it may not be that way moving forward just because of a rule that says, hey, now that we're going to go from this to this. So I think it's just a tough situation for everybody, not necessarily just for coaches right now, because there's just the like I said, the clarity part of it is just not there. And when is all of this going to kind of take place and happen? So I think that's probably the biggest issue right now is like, from a coaching standpoint, like when you get into this business, you're going to travel around, you're going to have to go to Georgia multiple times a year, you're going to have to, um, jump in your car and drive or get on a plane and fly to go watch events. Like that's a part of it, right? And that's honestly like when you're a coach, if you're not out doing that, then it's tough to put together the right team and to be a good coach, right? Like we can all talk about how good of a coach as we think we are, but ultimately we know like if you have good players, you have a chance to be a good coach. So that's recruiting is where it kind of starts. So if you like doing that and then you're gonna have a chance because you're at least gonna be able to see players and have a chance to get them to come to your school. So I think that's where it all starts. So if that's a challenge and that's an issue, then it's gonna be tough to be a good coach to start out with. But yeah, no, I mean it is one that by the time the futures games wrap up at the end of the summer, you're just like I need a break, right? Like that's kind of your couple week break before you get onto the campus and now your guys are starting to show up, and that's when the real fun begins again, because you get to be with those guys and kind of get that experience going.
Well, I know you came to Tennessee fairly late this summer, early fall. Were there any just major memories that stick out to you so far from the fall, or any highlights so far from your time in Knoxville?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to what you were saying earlier though. First, like the guys at Cincinnati, right? Like so.
Absolutely.
Taking this job, like first Coach Bishop, like for one, giving him the opportunity, like from a guy that we didn't know each other. The first time we saw each other was the Futures games that year, right? He walked in, was like, "Hey,"
That's
and I was like,
wild.
"Hey," so it's one of those where you kind of get that experience. But like we're just working with those guys at Cincinnati. When you talk about Jordan Bishop, Kyle Peteruto, Tom Winsky, the Beard, Kyle Schrader, and Taylor Sheriff, like working with those guys, man, it was not an easy decision, right? Like obviously the if this is a special place, and when I say Tennessee, so when Coach Vitello hit me up, it was just like I've got to think about this, right? Like this isn't just something you're like, no, I'm good. You got to think about it, and then you got to talk to your wife about it, and then you got to talk to your kids. It's like, hey, we've just moved twice now. Do we want to think about moving again? Um, so it's one of those where like those guys were awesome. They're doing a great job, like you said. They're fun to work with. Like if it was another school, I probably could have still be at Cincinnati right now. But when you talk about Tennessee, it's everything you see. And, from a college baseball fan, like I'm watching, I know these guys. I'm watching them last year as they're making their journey to the national championship, and it's fun, right? But then you're also seeing the fan base and everything that kind of goes with it. So I think that's what, like, now that, you leave Cincinnati, and it's hard to leave those guys because you saw what they were doing and what we were building there to what they continue to build. And they're going to do a good job in the Big 12 and nationally. So then you come here, and, Coach Vitello is awesome, right? He's He's a rock star in town. Everywhere you go, it's an autograph, it's a picture. It's basically sometimes you have to be security and photographer sometimes, take care of him. But it's that's fun. That's cool because it's like a place where like, man, these people care. Like, and I think that's probably the coolest thing is just Vol Nation is real. We played some outside competition games and the stadiums are packed. We played a Fall World Series game 2 of a Fall World Series, which I'm used to like nobody being there or parents only, and there's 7,000 people in the stands, right? So it's like it's cool for me to just like walk out there and be like, man, this is awesome. But then like just seeing like, man, this is kind of what it's going to be like all year, for the places that we're playing and the venues that we're going to go play at. Like it's going to be fun, right? So I think that's probably the biggest thing is seeing just the support and the love from the fan base and the expectation from the fan base. But then also I think like the from me, like, when you're talking about like, we always talk about players like, hey, you need to continue to get better and grow and develop and mature. And I think like from a coaching standpoint, like I have to do the same thing, right? Like it's kind of wrong if I'm saying it, but I'm not doing it. And ultimately, like, like being around Frank Anderson, who in my opinion is one of the best, if not the best pitching coaches in the country, and being around Josh Elander, who I mean, if you guys watch Tennessee and their offense, it's like all they do is hit home runs, right? It's like they're one of the best hitting teams in the country every year. So just kind of being around those guys and learning, and then seeing how Coach Vitello runs a program, like I think for me, it's like the personal development was one reason that I wanted to, but then also like just to be in a place where it's like this is the excitement, right? Like people are excited about baseball. We have an $80+ million renovation to our stadium going on right now, because they needed to build more seats for fans and more premium level seats because they didn't have any suites to fans, so they're going to be able to sell out. And it's just, you know, you've seen it on TV. This place is crazy. I'm excited to see it when it's for real. So I think the experience so far, it's the fall, so you kind of miss out on some of it because it's not the season. But I've seen like what it could be like, and it's pretty cool when you're talking about, hey, for a fall World Series game, there were 7,000 people here. What's it going to be when it's a SEC series? Like it's going to be crazy.
Yeah, that's a different world down there, it sounds like. And just
Yeah.
from a personal standpoint, like I'm super excited for you as a human being. And, I know there's a lot of sacrifices you're making with the family and with, just job decisions and going there late and everything. But extremely, extremely excited for you and your future and what it holds. And we've always been big fans of you, and just the fact that I got to spend some time with you as you were navigating the Prep Baseball Colorado thing, just on little, phone calls. Hey, how do I do this? How do I do that? And I hope I helped that transition, make it a little bit easier for you. But super grateful for your time today and your willingness to want to do this and hop on with us. And I thought you shed some great light on so many things that, high school players, parents should hopefully be able to learn from. And we're big fans of you.
You were my first teacher.
Is that right?
I think was it at Judson when I came out to watch the first event
Are we gonna bring
when
it
I
up? The
became
migraine?
PBR. Yeah,
Oh man,
when
that
I
was a
was
tough
when I
day
was
for me.
PBR Colorado. No, whatever, man. It was fine. Like I got to see kind of firsthand, like this is kind of what it is, of when you're going from being a college coach to PBR, like you showed me.
That's
So
no,
that's you were my first teacher.
that was definitely a memorable day from where I sit, and we were actually reminiscing about that the other day as a staff, having you out there, and then that was one of the hottest days of the summer, I think, in Chicago. I didn't know it could get that hot and humid, but
Yeah, it was hot and
yeah.
humid.
Well, good luck to you here the rest of I guess the winter before these guys go home for break, and next spring, and just beyond that as well, and we'll stay in touch. All right, Josh.
Appreciate it. Thanks for
All
having
right.
me on.
Thank you.
Just one thing I wanted to say is I just appreciate all the people that have been listening to our podcast and all of the guests that we've had on. I feel like they've been awesome conversations. So I'm super appreciative of the people that listen and our guests, and just getting to do this every week. It's a lot of fun. And I think if really, like, I think for me, and I think all of us, like, if there's anything that people feel like we should be talking about that we're not talking about, I'd love for people to let us know, like, what that would be. Because anything we always want to try and make this better. So anything we can do to do that, like, I'm all for it. So if anybody has anything that they want us to mention, just let us know.
I think
But
our mission is for the audience, right, Gavin? Like, we are trying to
yep,
provide content that the audience can learn from. And, hopefully that audience is parents and players and maybe fellow coaches out there, because we've had a lot of really good coaches on as well, that whether it's, life advice, coaching advice, evaluating advice, player advice, recruiting, um, that I could not agree with you more, Gavin, is like we're trying to give the audience things that will help them, and things they're interested in. And huge shout out to all the guests, all the interviews that have been willing to take the time to come on here, and all the audience that is listening. So